So last weekend of Championship football before Christmas, and it did not disappoint. Let's talk about it. So guys, welcome back to the channel. We got a lot to discuss in today's video. We got 11 matches to talk over instead of 12, as of course we had one cancelled. We also had a managerial sacking this weekend in the Championship, so a lot of action to digest. We've also got a couple of Championship clubs who are involved in the EFL Cup in midweek, so we'll be previewing those games at the end of today's video. Just before we do hop into anything though, I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors over at OneFootball. As always, you can find the new OneFootball app in the top line of the description down below. Really handy to have, especially at this time of the year, as the football schedule is so hectic, with the January transfer window, which is right around the corner as well. If you want to get live updates to your phone whenever a goal goes in, whenever there's a new transfer rumour going around your club, read up on all the latest news articles and stats from your club, OneFootball is the place to stay on top of everything. I find it really handy to sort of talk about stuff on the channel like this, so I'd highly recommend it. And just before we do hop into any of the individual games, I will include your guys' score predictions on screen now, so fair play to everyone who did successfully manage to get a score prediction correct this weekend. I had a decent one, to be fair to myself. I managed to get 2 of mine spot on. That was Millwall against Forest and Sheffield Wednesday against Coventry. Massive win for Wednesday, that one. But a couple of big shout outs need to go to Jake Kidd and Nottingham Forest Forever for being the only 2 people to correctly predict Luton 0, Bournemouth 0. I thought that one was going to be an absolute goal fest, but fair play to you 2 guys who called it. Then if we take a look to the side of me, what that means for the main prediction league, it is G-Vest FC who is leading the way heading into Christmas. Ant Chipman behind him, and then myself sat in 3rd place on 162 points. If we then take a look at the League 1 table, so these are the people that are closest to getting into that main prediction league, we've had quite a few people now breaking the 100-point barrier, so it's very congested in and around that League 1 table. Without any further ado now though guys, let's go ahead and hop into today's video. And so starting out with Friday night's game, we had Northend picking up a much needed 3 points against Bristol City, so normality resumes in this fixture. But even so, especially in the second half, Bristol City gave us some nervy moments, but in the first half there was really only one side in it. Preston had 8 attempts at half, Bristol City had none. They really didn't get anything going forward for themselves, and we had a couple of chances to take the lead before the penalty. Now, probably the most controversial point of this match was the actual penalty which was awarded. I'll be interested to get your guys' views on this one in the comments down below. Honestly, I'm still not 100% completely sold either way. It was soft, and I think that what I would say is if that penalty was given against Preston, I'd be pretty upset about it, to be honest. What I would say is from the majority of the angles you look at, the contact looks minimal. The one that looks most conclusive that it is a penalty is probably the angle from behind the goal if you've seen that replay. But yeah, it was a bit of a soft one, I'm not going to deny that, but Daniel Johnson dispatches it well, puts Northend 1-0 up, and after that we had a couple of other chances to make it 2. You know, Scott Sinclair had another good chance towards the end of that half, but Daniel Bentley made a good save. But going into the second half, Bristol City, I thought that Dean Holland actually reacted quite well to going behind. They changed their system around. Semenyo in the second half, he came on at half time, thought he was a really positive impact for Bristol City, causing us loads of problems down the left hand side. You know, Josh Earl I thought played quite well actually, but that was clearly an area where Bristol City were attacking a lot in that second half, and Declan Rudd made 2 absolutely fantastic saves. I've got to say, towards the end of this match, it's probably the most nervous I've been throughout the season so far. Bristol City really were piling on the pressure, but a couple of fantastic saves from Declan Rudd, both from Callum O'Dowd. But the one play that I really wanted to pick out from Northend's point of view for this game was Paul Gallagher. I thought that in the first half especially, he was absolutely running the show for us. He made more forward passes than anyone else in today's match, and what was most impressive was he was always looking for that forward passing to get us moving going forward. You know, it wasn't just sideways and backwards and retaining possession with Gallagher. It was really about switching the play and getting us clicking into second gear. We also had a couple of chances second half. You know, Reece had a very good chance to wrap it up, but Daniel Bentley made a very good save. In the end, I thought that Northend probably deserved all 3 points, but Bristol City did give it a good go second half. Next up then, moving on into Saturday's early kickoff, we had Norwich beating Cardiff by 2-0, so another 3 points for this Norwich side against a pretty informed Cardiff side. But I mean, the player who stole absolutely all the headlines in this one was Emi Buendia. It was a magical performance from the creative midfielder. If we actually look at his stats so far this season, that's now 6 goals, 6 assists, and 54 chances created, which is an absolutely fantastic output. Everything for Norwich creativity wise was going through Emi Buendia. Cardiff, I mean, it's no disgrace to be losing to this Norwich side at the moment, but I felt like in a couple of instances they were just a little bit too sloppy on the ball in midfield. They gave away a couple of cheap breaks to Norwich, and maybe in some aspects were a little bit too respectful in the ways they sort of sat off them. You know, for that first Buendia goal, they didn't know whether to engage him and go in for the tackle or just back off and back off, but in the end it's a wonderful finish from outside the box. He gets the assist for the second Cantwell goal. goal, which is brilliantly taken. Todd Cantwell, by the way, I think he's just getting started for this season now, getting himself back into that Norwich side. And they had several other chances, you know, Alex Smithies made some good saves, but at 1-0 Norwich, Cardiff did have a very good chance to get back into this game. Sean Morrison with a header, but Michael McGovern in net, who, in the absence of Tim Krul's, been maybe a bit of an underrated player for them so far this season. He came up with a brilliant save against Reading as well, really at point blank range. Fantastic reflexes, and it shows that, you know, in this Norwich squad, the players that have actually stepped in for these injured players have actually done a really good job for them. So that's, you know, shows strength in depth for this Norwich side. But at the moment, they are looking like the runaway leaders for the Championship, aren't they? It's fantastic football they're playing, and it's very reminiscent of that last promotion season they had at this level. Next up, we then go to St Andrews as Middlesbrough saw off Birmingham by 4-1. Now, Karanka going up against Warnock. I had the impression this one was going to be a fairly low scoring game, probably one goal either way settles it, but Middlesbrough completely wiped the floor with this Birmingham side, who would have been even more disappointing considering they took the lead and actually started out quite well in this game, but they were unravelled by some absolutely shocking defending in this one. We've seen some poor examples of defending so far this season in the Championship, but this 90 minutes from Birmingham I think might take the biscuit. They were absolutely woeful. Don't get me wrong, Neil Etheridge had his own hand to play in a couple of these goals, but structurally they were absolutely all over the place, and Middlesbrough were just efficient with the goals they scored in this one. The first goal, really nice pick out from Mark Bowler, but it's so easy from that left back position. He manages to cut his pass through about 4 Birmingham players. Assombalonga does well to finish at the tight angle. The second goal, nice link up from Johnson and Saville, who's good at making those runs from midfield into the near post. He finishes quite well. But Middlesbrough then go in 2-1 at half time, but then the second half, both goals conceded here were an absolute shambles on top of the other two they conceded in the first half. I mean, the Etheridge own goal, I'm not sure what he's doing. I actually think he's been fairly good for Birmingham so far this season, but he had a game to forget here, and then with the Wing goal as well. I mean, Wing loves a goal from outside the box, doesn't he? But another one he'll have been disappointed with there. But like I said, a lot of credit has to be given to Middlesbrough, who are one sort of criticism earlier on to this season. You know, they look like a really solid side coming into this season under Neil Warnock. I think that the vast majority of people predicted a big improvement from last season. The one sort of reservation we all had though was about scoring goals. Credit to them though, they've been scoring quite a lot and have bounced back really well from that game they had against Preston a couple of weeks ago. They put 3 goals past Millwall, now putting 4 goals past Birmingham. The result sees them lifted into the top 6, and they are challenging in and around that area now. For Birmingham, on the other hand, Blues fans, let me know down below what's gone wrong for you guys this season, because I'll look at that team on paper and I think there's 11 good individuals there, but it's just not clicking into a system at the moment. And then we have Brentford continuing their impressive unbeaten run as they saw off Reading by 3-1. This result for Brentford now leaves them just 3 points off Bournemouth in second place. So really impressive stuff from Brentford here, who really took advantage of the mistakes that Reading made defensively in the first half. The first goal shouldn't have gone in. Raphael should be doing a lot better from that situation, a goalkeeper of his calibre especially. And I have noticed a few more mistakes have been creeping into his game so far this season. You know, we think back to that Bournemouth game where he really had a game to forget. This weekend in general for Championship goalkeepers, quite a few of them were dropping clangers. You know, we were just speaking then about Etheridge. The same for Raphael could be said in this one, but the headlines after that were stolen by Brian and Mbeumo, who up until this point had been having a fairly quiet season for Brentford, to be honest. You know, if we looked at his fantastic goal output from last season up until this game, he wasn't quite matching that. I know he's chipped in with quite a few assists so far this season, but he gets to back doing what he does best in this game, I think. Cutting inside onto his left foot, the first goal was a brilliant example of that. Took his second goal very nicely as well, and 3-0 up at half time. Brentford have the game won from there, really, don't they? Reading do get one back in the second half, and it was another assist for Elise. Really nice ball into the box, and Luco manages to head in, but ultimately it would only amount to being a consolation goal, and Brentford saw things out quite well. So Brentford really looking like a strong case for the top 6 and promotion this season, I think it's fair to say. Norwich at the moment are looking like the runaway leaders, but with Bournemouth dropping points this weekend especially, it leaves the door open for another club to be sneaking in there. Next up we move on to Huddersfield 2, Watford 0, a result which ultimately sees the end of Vladimir Ivic as the Watford manager. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that in the comments down below. We'll discuss that in just a second, but first of all, a lot of credit has to be given to Huddersfield. Really positive first off. They were getting on the ball, opening up pockets of space for chances. In the end, they were probably gifted the first one, weren't they? You know, talking about goalkeeping mistakes this weekend. Ben Foster has a bit of a howler trying to play out from the back. Campbell latches onto it, makes it 1-0 to Huddersfield. Their second goal coming as an own goal from Capu. And in the second half, Watford trying to work their way back into things, but ultimately nothing's quite clicking for them. So like I say, for Huddersfield, Carlos Corberán so far this season has got this group of players playing, you know, individually 1 to 11. I don't think they have the best squad in the Championship, but it's a system which they believe in, and I think that if they continue to adapt this throughout the season and heading into next season, there's a lot of positive signs around Huddersfield at the moment, so I'm quietly optimistic about them going forward and for their long-term future as well on the Corberán. But we'll flip over to Watford now, and Watford fans, I want to get your guys' thoughts on this in the comments down below. Now, for Vladimir Ivic, I mean, the first thing that a lot of people will point to is Watford being 5th in the league, which isn't, you know, a disaster by any means for this part of the season. They're still competitive in and around the top of the Championship, but there has throughout the season always been this feeling of unpredictability with Watford throughout the season. I think more so with Watford compared to the other 2 clubs that were relegated with them. There's been a lot more inconsistency about them, you know. Performances have very much been all or nothing. It has been a fairly defensive approach, and the players that Watford have, you know, if you look at their players on paper, probably aren't too suited to that with the amount of attacking talent they have in that squad. But surely they knew that style of play was coming when they actually hired Vladimir Ivic. And they didn't waste any time finding his replacement. They've gone for Xisco Munoz, the Spanish manager who has limited first team experience as a manager, I think it's fair to say. Watford fans, I'll be very interested to get your guys' thoughts on all of this sort of situation in the comments down below. Next up then, we had Luton playing out a goalless draw with Bournemouth. Now, I did predict a draw for this one. Luton has been a tough place to go to throughout the season so far, but I did imagine there'd be a few more goals scored, and in the end it was a bit of a stalemate. Bournemouth spent, as you can see by the match stats to the side of me, a lot of this game sort of probing around the Luton box, trying to find openings here and there, but to be honest, their clear-cut chances were fairly few and far between. Luton themselves actually had a decent few chances going forward on the counter-attack. Admir Begovic actually had a really good game for the away side to keep the clean sheet in the end. Dewsbury Hall, I thought, shined in midfield for Luton. Another impressive performance from him. I was really impressed with his performance when Preston came to Luton in midfield. Really impressive stuff from him so far this season. And to be honest, it looked like maybe a bit of fatigue played a part in this one for Bournemouth. You know, I suppose we can't always expect them to be at their sparkling best, you know, from putting 5 goals past Huddersfield and stuff like that. We are in the middle of a block of fixtures where the Championship's been ridiculously congested in terms of how many football matches have been played in such a short period of time. That's obviously always going to take its toll on players. So in the end, I don't think it's the worst point in the world for either side, to be honest. Next up, we then had Millwall drawing 1 apiece with Nottingham Forest. I think it's probably the away side Forest who'll be happier to take the point from this one. Millwall probed a lot throughout this match, but ultimately could only pick up the 1 point from it. In the first half, they had a very strong shout for a penalty for handball. I think that in the Premier League with VAR, that probably gets given, to be honest with you. And it was the home side who had the better of the chances in that first half, but then moving into the second, they actually started out really positively. This is what we want to see more from Millwall this season. Bodvarsson driving towards the box. He's got a whole bunch of Forest players who are circulating him, trying to close him down, but to be fair to Bodvarsson, doesn't panic, cuts the ball back really nicely into the path of Tom Bradshaw, who finishes well. But that lead was to last only a matter of minutes. It was, in the end, a quite disappointing goal to give away. It was a long ball hooked forward. Lewis Grabban just about does enough to put off Hutchinson from the ball, doesn't see Alex Martin coming in behind him, and he actually takes his goal really well. We picked him out on the Championship roundup last time. Some really impressive stuff from him over the last couple of days, and I'm sure that he'll be absolutely buzzing to get off the mark for the season. And then after that, Millwall carry on trying to probe and find that second goal. Ryan Leonard almost scores an absolute worldie towards the end of this game, a volley from outside the box, but Samba's level to it. I mean, you can see by the match stats here to the side of me, you know, Forest ultimately only had 1 shot on target for this game, and they walked away with a point from it, so they'll take that every day of the week. You know, 4 points from their last 2 matches. They actually climb up the table with Rotherham not playing as well. Then to Rotherham against Derby. We don't really have all too much to be talking about for this game, do we? If we actually look at the Championship table to the side of me now, this fixture's just become even more enticing, with Rotherham sat 21st and Derby sat 22nd in the league. Obviously, Derby looking to continue this unbeaten run that they're currently on. But this was the statement that Rotherham put out before kick-off. Obviously, the game ultimately being postponed due to a player testing positive, and other players around the club have been showing symptoms as well. To be honest with you, I've been fairly surprised that not more matches have been called off for similar reasons throughout the season so far. This was the first game in the Championship, and you know, we're 20 games in now that game's actually been called off for this reason. And actually, just as I was saying that, Millwall have now put out a statement on Twitter saying that their next 2 matches have been postponed due to an outbreak of COVID-19 within the squad. This is the statement that Millwall have just put out. They've said this is a very regrettable but necessary move. So their game on Boxing Day against Bournemouth, and after that against Watford have both now been postponed. After that, we then had Wednesday beating Coventry by 1-0. Now, we did actually predict this one, and quite a few of you guys did as well, so fair play to everyone who did call this game. Now, a big 3 points for Sheffield Wednesday. It cannot be underestimated. The players who probably came out as most crucial in this one were some of their more experienced players. You know, Kieran Westwood on his return to the side was absolutely fantastic, as you can see to the match stats to the side of me here. Coventry had quite a bit of the ball for this one and had their fair share of chances, but Westwood was level to absolutely everything that was flowing his way. In the end, the goal as well, it was a link up between two of their most experienced players, Barry Bannon with the free kick and Tom Lees heading in. Tom Lees, who was one of their best performers in this game as well. And for Wednesday, it probably should have had more than one goal, to be honest with you. You know, how Josh Windass didn't get on the score sheet today, I've got absolutely no idea. He had one brilliant one-on-one chance to wrap the game up, but couldn't quite convert. And that is one of the areas where I am still a little bit hesitant with Sheffield Wednesday in terms of actual goal scoring. You know, will a forward two of Callum Patterson and Josh Windass sustainably score enough goals throughout a full season to keep Sheffield Wednesday up? Because I think that behind them, with the experienced players they have, they can form a decent core, you know, if everyone stays fit for them. You know, their midfield I don't think is too bad when everyone's fit. And even with Westwood in there, I think that gives them a bit more balance in defence and gives them a bit of leadership from that area as well. It's just a question of goals, because don't get me wrong, Windass pops up in some very good positions. I think his movement is very good, quite similar to a player like Jamal Lowe actually at Swansea so far this season. It's just a question of him being a little bit more clinical in front of goal, which is what Jamal Lowe's been doing recently for Swansea. So maybe if Windass manages to turn that corner, we will see a better goal output from Wednesday this season, but not taking anything away from it. That was a big 3 points for Wednesday there. Next up then, we had Stoke beating Blackburn by 1-0. Big result for Stoke in this one as they keep the pressure on the rest of the top six. They're just behind Middlesbrough on goal difference at the moment, sat in 7th place. The goal was nicely scored as well. Nick Powell does well latching on to the Morgan Fox cross. It was a nice bit of movement for him to create a bit of space for himself, and then the diving header really well taken. For the majority of the second half, this was Blackburn attacking threat. You can see by the match stats to the side of me, but defensively, this was an absolutely wonderful performance from Stoke here to shut out this Blackburn side who's been, you know, a free scoring unit throughout the season so far. This Rover side will be thinking, how have we not got back into this? But Stoke defensively, absolutely brilliant, and I don't think it's that much of an outrageous statement to say that Michael O'Neill right now is probably one of the best managers in the Championship. The way that he's been able to completely transform the fortunes of this Stoke squad, you know, make no mistake, when he walked into this job, it was a toxic club who was only heading in one direction, and that was down the Championship. They were regularly shipping goals, you know, 3, 4, even 5 goals a game sometimes. To add on to the situation as well, considering all the injuries that Stoke have got to key players at this point in time, for them to be where they are in the table right now is immensely impressive, and I think that Michael O'Neill deserves a lot of credit for that. So another good result for them in this one here, and they'll keep ticking along for the rest of the season. After that, we had Swansea putting an end to Barnsley's impressive unbeaten run, beating them by 2-0. Now, the conditions of the Swansea pitch probably didn't allow this one to be the most like fast, free-flowing game of football that it potentially could have been, and I know that Swansea are working on that and that a new pitch should be ready for their next home match, but nevertheless it did look like it was in a bit of a state anyway. But nicely taken goal for Swansea after just 2 minutes. It was Lowe popping up in a good area. That's the sort of thing he does, plays off the shoulder of the last defender. Little knockdown comes to him and he takes his goal quite well to put Swansea up going into half time. In the second half, it was the own goal which then wrapped things up for Swansea. You know, we did have a feeling coming into this preview that, you know, Barnsley's impressive unbeaten run would eventually come to an end, and this game against Swansea at the Liberty might just have been one game too far. But actually looking at the Championship table now, Swansea really have to be taken seriously as promotion candidates. You know, with Bournemouth dropping points, then are just 2 points behind them, sat in 3rd place in the Championship at the moment. Probably the two outstanding sides throughout the season so far have been Norwich and Bournemouth for the vast majority of it, but the rest of the league's very open at the moment, and Swansea have been the best of the rest so far. But on the flip side of that, we also can't get too carried away with one team, because I mean, Reading, who are in 8th place, are just 3 points behind Swansea at the moment, so it's wonderfully congested around the playoffs at the moment, isn't it? And then to finish off today's video, we had Wycombe against QPR playing out a 1-1 draw, a point which doesn't really do either side any favours. This felt like a bit of a must-win game for both sides, with the current winless runs that each of them find themselves on at the moment. That extends for another game week now, with this one ultimately finishing level now. Wycombe, like we mentioned going into this game, individual mistakes may end up costing them. It was another own goal by McCarthy. It was a fairly similar one to the second goal they conceded against Preston as well. It was Chair with the ball in, McCarthy just cuts across the ball and Allsop can't stop it from going into the back of his own net. For QPR, once again I sound like a bit of a broken record whenever I'm talking about them this season. Chair by far and away their best player, especially in terms of a creative aspect. If it's not for him and maybe Asai Samuel making the odd dribble here and there as well, they lack something going forward. You know, it's another game when Chair's been subbed off, they lose that attacking intent going forward, then they ultimately concede a late goal. It was in the 88th minute when Wycombe got back into this one, and prior to that they had chances, you know, but ultimately it finished level between these two. The point leaves Wycombe now bottom of the Championship on goal difference, and QPR just 4 points above the relegation zone, with Derby and Rotherham having a game in hand on them. But guys, there we have it. There were all the results and all the action that took place this weekend over the Championship. So as always, do get your thoughts in the comments down below as to what you made of your team's performance. I'd be interested to know. In terms of my results of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Middlesbrough for that fantastic 4-1 away hammering at Birmingham that now sees them lifted into the top 6 of the Championship. And then for my goal of the weekend, I'm going to give it to Todd Cantwell. Really classy finish from outside the box, but not just that, the build-up play which actually led to the goal as well. Brilliantly worked from Norwich, and like I said before, I think they're only going to go on and get better. So Todd Cantwell gets my goal of the week. And before we do wrap up today's video, we do have a couple of Championship clubs who are in action in midweek in the EFL Cup quarter-final. So first of all, we got Brentford up against Newcastle. Feel free to leave these score predictions in the comments down below if you feel like it, just for a bit of fun. So Brentford up against Newcastle. I actually feel like Brentford could give Newcastle a really good run for their money in this one. I expect Brentford to probably have a little bit more of the ball as well. They'll really look to take the game to Newcastle, and ultimately they've got nothing to lose. I expect Thomas Frank's probably going to make a couple of changes for this one, but Ivan Toney up against his former club, I'm sure he'll be keen to score. Why not? I'll back Brentford for this one. I'll go 2-1 to the home side. We'll see what happens. And then on Wednesday, we got Stoke going up against Tottenham. Now, like we've just been mentioning with Stoke, Michael O'Neill's doing an absolutely fantastic job there at the moment, but up against Mourinho's Spurs, it may be one step too far for them in this one. I feel like, obviously, with Tottenham recently falling away a little bit in the Premier League, Mourinho's going to be desperate to win the trophy there with Spurs this season, and the EFL Cup seems like a good opportunity for them to do so with them already in the quarterfinals. I'm going to go probably play it safe for that one. I'm going to go 2-0 Spurs, but if Stoke pull a shock off in that one, then that'll be some present for the Stoke fans, I'm sure, but I'm just going to play it safe and go 2-0 Spurs, but do feel free to let me know in the comments down below what you guys see happening. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you did go on to enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. It is always massively appreciated, and please do subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content if you are new around here. But apart from that, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.